Hello, my name is Kapil. I'm a PhD student at Northwestern University, and today I'd like to show you how future workplace tools can be more integrated with how we work. Workplaces need to develop solutions to complex work. While routine work, like data entry, might have clear tasks the worker needs to do, complex work often involves a high-level goal workers have, which corresponds to many tasks. For example, an agile software team wants to develop a new user feature. They know that it'll have to plan out what the development sprint looks like, fix any remaining bugs in their code, and plan to conduct user testing, but they may also have other tasks that they don't know about just yet. In a workplace, workers are constantly monitoring for these high-level tasks and needs, and then thinking about how to strategize for how to resolve them on their own or with the support from others in their organization, and also re-strategizing when new tasks or needs surface. In short, workers are enacting situated strategies tied to the people and venues in which they collaborate. As an illustrative example, consider workplaces wanting teams to learn how to work within a sprint's time constraints, since chronic overworking can cause workers to burn out. Enacting situated strategies requires you to monitor for your needs, such as a person checking if they're overworked by examining their tools and recognizing that a lot more time was spent on a sprint than was available. But upon finding this out, they still have to figure out what strategies to try on their own, like ways to seek more help. Or who can support them in enacting those strategies, like a project lead during a weekly team planning meeting. So it's not just thinking about the task, but really the ways of working, and you're not just doing it for this one task, but many simultaneously, all with different situated strategies. And our prior work showed that this takes time and support from peers and experts in the organization, but even that wasn't enough. Ultimately, we found that you need some kind of technology to provide this support. But our current tools are totally unfit for helping us enact situated strategies. First, our existing tools don't really understand how we work. For the same overworking example, we want to be able to say to a system to generally raise this issue at the next planning meeting with our project team as a general strategy, and have it raised appropriately for different teams at their specific meeting. But because our current tools, like Slack reminders, don't have abstraction for these ideas of teams and their planning meetings, we instead have to provide them with specific people and times for their planning meetings. This mismatch between what we want to express and what we have to express is a huge problem because it requires us to move away from our situated ways of thinking and instead conform to how the tool knows how to support us, when it really should be the other way around. Second, our tools are primarily designed for automation, which is incompatible for learning and enacting situated strategies. A system for supporting situated work should show us signals of what needs are happening, like a team overworking, and facilitate discussion with the appropriate people in the appropriate places to address them, since there could be different reasons for why it's happening, like not seeking help or having plans that were overly ambitious, would necessitate different strategies. But tools like Zapier are really designed for automating rote processes, like creating a file in Google Drive when someone receives an attachment in their email, and not for helping us strategize on how to resolve a work need. As a result, these tools are inflexible to us discussing if and how we want to enact the suggested strategies by the tool. And so to address these challenges, we designed orchestration scripts to support workers in enacting situated work practices in their workplace. The conceptual approach of our system is to provide computational abstractions of a specific organization's ways of working for encoding situated strategies that workers can attempt on their own or with others across the organization. Next, I'll show you the key design aspects of our system in a slightly simplified way for the purpose of this talk. More details on our system can be found in our paper. So let's start with the same situated strategy we've been talking about. When a team is overworked in the last sprint, raise potential help-seeking and replanning strategies to them and their project manager during their weekly planning meeting. So let's break this into three pieces that we'll now use orchestration scripts to create a situated work script for, which includes a situation detector for what we want the system to monitor for, specifically when at the end of a sprint if a team has overworked, the suggested strategies they can discuss, and the opportunities that includes who and when to have these discussions with. Now, here's where the magic starts to happen. I'm going to highlight all the pieces of the script that we're going to turn into code. Using organizational objects, we can replace each of these pieces with an abstraction that references a specific way of working in the organization. We'll start with the sprint process, then the productivity tools, then the social structures and relationships, and finally the venues for collaboration. So now we have a situated script that encodes a general situated strategy using our organizational object abstractions. And since these are abstractions, we do also need a way to map actual values onto them. And so what we do is create a Studio API that brings together the data about an organization's processes tools, social structures, and venues into a single queryable instrumentation. And for this instance, we see here the start and end of sprints, the data in the tools the two teams are using for planning, mentors for those teams, and when each of the team's planning meetings are. Finally, for situated strategies to work well, we need to recognize when situations are actually met and deliver the relevant strategies at appropriate times and settings. The orchestration scripts execution engine is able to take the general scripts we just wrote and instantiate them in customized ways for particular people using data from the Studio API. So here we see the data being used to evaluate the script for Jim and Bob, where the original general script on the left now reflects the data for Jim and Bob in the middle. Since they overworked and the situation detector evaluates true, it delivers the suggested strategies to Luna, their mentor, at the start of Jim and Bob's planning meeting on Monday morning. And this works similarly for another team that has their meetings on another day. So now, I just want to show you everything I just talked about and pause for a moment. What's so special about what I've just shown you is that we now have a way to encode general work strategies for different situated contexts in the workplace using organizational objects that, when enacted, can support situated work activities across an entire organization. And without the tools that we've introduced in this work, and the idea of having abstractions for how we work, we wouldn't be able to encode and enact these kinds of situated strategies with the help of software. And so, to evaluate orchestration scripts, we instrumented an entire research learning community, and specifically their social relationships, venues, work and collaboration tools, and work processes using our organizational objects. Using those objects, we wrote situated scripts for when a team was overcommitted on an upcoming week's plans, to help prepare end of deliverables for them, and to work effectively across venues. Now, I'll show you how encoding these scripts with organizational objects helps to promote effective ways of working. Using organizational objects, we were able to capture a student's planning process in their sprint, identify when they were overcommitted, and surface the issue at a planning venue where it could be discussed. This was useful for Irene because it was something that she normally would not check for a senior student like Amanda, but paid special attention to it when it was raised to her. In short, orchestration scripts allowed Irene to catch an important work need that she normally would have missed. In addition, situated scripts also encode relevant strategies that orchestration scripts can surface at appropriate times for people to discuss. Here, we show a script that suggests how strategies for planning and end-of-term deliverables to a project mentor at the last planning meeting. Robbie found this to be helpful since these strategies were the relevant strategies for him to discuss with his students, since it was the final planning meeting when he wanted to talk about end-of-term deliverables. And because organizational objects encode the way we work, we can also think about encoding suggestions for how to collaborate in each venue in the workplace and feed discussions across venues. So Amanda was prompted to think about how we can use office hours to progress her deliverables, and because of that, Irene saw an opportunity to help emphasize to Amanda how she could learn to work more independently and starting working on her deliverables that they had discussed previously on her own. This shows how orchestration scripts can support the learning of effective work strategies over time across different venues because it actually understands how we work. And so the key idea to summarize our work is that we enable computational agents to track all these dynamic data about how we work throughout our workplace by providing the organizational objects that act as abstractions for how we work. It's through that we can actually understand how we're working across an entire work ecosystem. And so what I want to close with is just how might we design tools that benefit from this ecosystem-wide intelligence? And so one approach is just simply to embed the organizational objects into our existing tools. So if you recall the earlier example I had with Slack, what if instead of having to encode all the low-level specifics of what we wanted it to do, we could just refer to the same abstractions encoded in our organizational objects? Already, this simple advancement would begin to allow us to interface with our tools in the same way that we think about situated work. Another idea, though, is thinking about how we can create tools that are really embedded in our ways of working. So for instance, consider taking meeting notes during a coaching meeting, where students bring in progress to discuss with their mentors and determine follow-up plans. We can do so much better than these simple meeting notes, though. So, for instance, we could think about providing greater awareness of work needs and potential strategies by servicing tracked orchestration scripts that we already have. But we can also think about how different contexts from work situations and tools instrumented using organizational objects could also be helpful, like who a student sought help from during a pairing session, to support strategizing, and this would allow us to support strategizing of different ways to resolve work needs. Finally, we can use organizational objects to embed programs that make discuss follow-up practices actually actionable and follow up with us in other venues, carrying forward the practices that we think are helpful into the situations where they should be attempted. So, in this way, I hope what I've shown you today helps us move towards workplace tools that are more in tune and integrated with our ways of working. And so, in summary, we contribute orchestration scripts, a system that encodes situated scripts for enacting strategies using organizational objects, which are abstractions for how we work in an organization. And we argue that future workplace tools need an ecosystem-level intelligence embedded into them using our organizational objects to support situated work. Thank you for listening.